Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to our AutoCAD webinar. So we'll have a look at some tips and tricks that we can use for basically boosted productivity and some workflows. So my name's David. I'm with Interscale, so I'm the BIMCAD technical consultant here, and I do the training as well. And I'm certified for like Revit, and I train Dynamo and 3ds and CAD as well. So a few things that we'll have a look at today. Dynamic blocks. So they're really handy for basically, I'll show you how to do like a simple block and how we can build on that for maybe like our doors and windows, and then even some hatch tricks that we can do within our dynamic blocks. We'll have a look at tables. I like to use those for quantities and costing, as well as some drawing checks as well if you want to make sure that everything is drawn in your documentation. Express tools are also really convenient for text and line work, as well as the action recorder and the sheet set manager. And we'll have a look at some CUI manipulation so we can do different customizations to both our keyboard shortcuts and our buttons as well if you're a button pusher. We'll have a look at some LISPS, which are handy for creating different types of legends and hatching. And then more of an advanced topic, but we'll have a look at some scripting in Civil 3D for our AutoCAD documentation. So in terms of dynamic blocks, we'll have a look at how we can basically quickly rotate and adjust blocks without using any commands. So it could be really handy if it's just a type of blocks that you're using that needs to be rotated or scaled perhaps. It's just a bit easier to do it this way. We can also create parametric windows and doors. And we can also change the visibility states to expedite our drafting. And I'll show you a couple different ways of doing that. And then we'll have a look at tool palettes as well, which are very handy when we're dealing with block placement. So how do we basically get a bit more productive? And I'll just show you a couple of tips and tricks that I've been using to be a bit more efficient in our workflows. So let's just start off with some dynamic blocks, which we'll just start with a rectangle because it's just easy to kind of show you the tools that we have in it. So in here, if we just select it and we type in block, we can get into our block editor, and then we can basically name it. So try and come up with a naming convention. And then in here, we can start to basically specify whatever we need. So we can specify where our base point is. We can specify what we're actually doing. And I like to add a description just because it's handy in multiple different areas, and we'll go kind of through that. So we'll just pick our base point and our objects, and we hit enter, and we'll go into our block editor. So in here we have an extra little palette here, which is basically different things that we can use for our blocks. So for example, if we wanted to do a rotation for our rectangle, we can basically just have a look at your command line. It'll tell you what to do. So we'll pick our base point and how we want it to rotate with our angle, and we'll just snap it here. And you'll notice there's a little exclamation point, and that's because it needs to have an action. So all you have to do is just go into your little action tab, and here we can pick our rotate, pick our parameter like it says at the bottom, and then it's going to say select our objects. So that's what we'll do, and just hit enter. I like to go into test block as well instead of exiting, because this way I can test and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So you'll see our little ball here, and that's basically helping us do a little rotation. So that's just a bit faster than either using that little rotate button or typing it in. So we can quickly rotate stuff. We just close that, we'll go back into our block editor, and maybe we want to add a linear dimension. So we'll just put that here, bring it down, and then we can add an action to it. So maybe we want to stretch it. Again, we'll pick our parameter, then it's going to say our base point of that parameter, and then what we actually want to stretch. We kind of want to stretch this area, and then our objects. And again, we can test it out. And now we have a little grip here that we can start to stretch, and then we can still rotate. And we'll just close the test block, and we'll just add one more. So I can show you a scaling. So we'll add a distance. We'll add our scale. and which objects we want, and hit enter. And now let's just test it out. And now you can see when we pull that, it scales it. But have a look at here. You can see that this gets skewed, and same with the rotation. And that's because it's not smart enough to know that you want them to be all at the same time. So if you do find that this is the case, we just need to modify the set. So the selection set basically. So it just doesn't know. So if we just click on here, we can use that action button and then modify. And we just want to select everything because we want everything to move with that scale. And then we'll have to do that for the rotation as well, because that was the first one we made. We'll just make sure that we select everything and hit enter. And now when we test it, we can see that we can rotate it, and then all the handles stay where they should. And you'll see that that stretching one also moves with it. So I'll just close this out and save the changes. And I'll show you how we can kind of apply that kind of method to, say, something like a door. So this door, for example, I can mirror it both directions. I can also change the thickness of it depending on wall thicknesses that I've set. And I can also change the sizing of the door based on sizing that I did. So let's just have a look at how it's built. Similar to what we kind of discussed, it just uses different parameters. So we have some visibility states. So if I just toggle that, you can kind of see they're all actually there. They're just hidden depending on that visibility state. So as I kind of go through it, you can see all the different parameters are moving with it. If I look in here, there's also one thing to note, which is just in our properties panel. So let's just bring that up. That there is a movement modifier, which is, I'll show you it in a second, but basically just note that it is by default set to 1, and we want it to, depending on what you're moving, it needs to be set a certain distance. So basically, whenever you have a user move your grip a certain distance, it needs to move with that just so that it kind of moves in uniform. So I'll show you that a bit more in detail here. So in this window, for example, I can stretch it in 500 millimeter increments up, and then like in a meter increments to the side. And I also have different visibilities for 2 or 3 windows. And as the user moves it, I want certain elements to move in that multiplier. So if we just edit this, and I'll bring the 3 windows up, you'll see in here, again in our properties area, that this is moving 0.33 of the distance that the person moves that grip. So basically it just needs to move a third because there's 3 windows. And so basically it'll just move the frame and like the little reflection hatches. And similarly for the other one, it's 2/3 of the way. And then for the 2 windows, I have 0.5. So it's just something to think about. And then you can also create a list so that people can only move at a certain distance. That way you can kind of cater that. Another thing to think about is maybe using that visibility is how do we basically detail our drawing? So maybe 1 to 10 interior has a little bit of extra information, and then maybe at 1 to 25 exterior and interior has less details. And then maybe our 1 to 100 has even less. So think about how we can use that one basically family. Well, we'll just call it a family, like a block. The window can be basically changed depending on the detail level that you want to be drafting at. And similar to that, we can think about maybe in plan, elevation, and section, how that same window could look. And then at least you're only having that one window that you're placing in different areas, but you can just basically just reuse them and just pick and choose which visibility it's at. At least this way, if you put it in a window schedule, you can actually just draw it in different areas, and your plans and sections will reflect accordingly. So if anything changes, you can change it in one area. So I like to use the tool palette. So all the blocks that I do, and if you are a presser, just go to View and then Tool Palettes instead of typing in Tool Palettes. And then I can just drag and drop my blocks accordingly. I like to use attributed definitions in my blocks because text, when you mirror it, it won't actually mirror the text properly. So attributed text is the way to go. And then you can hide that option if you don't want to always specify it. I just wanted to show you that. I also have a little align tool in my door so that it can snap a bit easier. And then again, I can change all this information. I can flip my doors if I need to, however I need it, which is really cool. And then I can just snap it. You'll see this little hatch I have in here. I can snap it to that. And if I just bring it to my front, you'll see that it covers the hatch. So I have a little wipeout inside of it. So that way I don't have to worry about constantly cutting my walls. Like say the door had to move for whatever reason. You'll see I don't have to worry about cutting my hatches and my walls because the door will actually hide that for me. So you can kind of see it in here. So basically it'll just hide whatever is underneath it. So I like to use that little wipeout in my doors. Just saves me a bit of time. And then if you don't like that there isn't a line there, you could actually put the wipeout frame and just set it to 1. I think by default it is set to 1. So yeah, basically it just creates that little line where where I basically made that little wipeout. So definitely have a look at that. And then in the tool palettes, Autodesk has tons of dynamic blocks. So definitely have a look and take advantage, whether you just use the ones that they already have, see how they made them, or just create one and then just duplicate it and cater it to whatever you need. Maybe you add that fill hatch that they don't have. And just think about how you could basically expedite some workflow. And it's nice when you have a tool palette, you can share it with your basically your whole company. And then you could just, if like one person is designated to be editing blocks, then you could just do that and it'll reflect for everyone and everyone's basically just using it. So it's a good way to be like as a cohort using the same type of blocks. Tables. So for tables, I like to use that. I can quickly check and quantify which blocks have been drawn. And then I can actually push and pull data to and from Excel, which I like to do as well, just because the tables in CAD are a little bit clunky. And then with the help of Excel, I can actually add costing to my drawings as well. So in here, so basically just creating a table is pretty simple. And then we can either download it from a source. So whenever it regenerates, it'll start to build up your table for you. So for example, that rectangular door that we created will be in here. You can start to basically do whatever you want with matching certain things. You can also unlock and lock cells. You can change the font styles should you need to, and basically just cater to whatever you need. So maybe this one's a little bit bigger or too big, sorry. And we want to just double check what our settings are, just unlock stuff and have a look. So it's 150 and I'll just basically change this back to 150. But yeah, you have a lot of freedom to manipulate stuff. And this is all basically pulled and it is live. So as you start to change stuff, you'll have like your counts change, for example. And depending on the attributes that you add, like you'll see the type and some of them I have like height and width. So I brought that in. From there, I can actually export it to Excel. So it's just table export, or you can right click and export as well. And then you'll just select your table. It'll ask you where you want to save it. I have it open, so just replace it. And it'll look something like this. Just a sec. There you go. So basically it looks the same as in CAD. And I like to use that as a reference one. And then I use all my conditional formatting in another one, and I just reference the other Excel. So this way I can just have a couple if statements to see if I've drawn the necessary windows. I can also add some costing. So for example, maybe this door changed its sizing. So now it's 870 and I just hit save. You'll see that this reflects in this one and the costing also reflects. So I like to keep that one kind of separate. And then this way I can actually insert it into my CAD. And then it'll have all that formatting. You'll notice that this bottom one has costing and the top one doesn't. You can actually pick and choose what you want to show from your Excel file. So maybe you just have extra information that you don't really want to show. You can actually specify that. So let's just do that quickly. If we go into this one and we go to data links, edit, you'll see that I've specified, once the little dialog box comes up, I've specified where I want it. So the other one is G10, A1 to G10. That's why it has the cost, but this one doesn't. So you can really start to cater it accordingly. And even if you have different sheets on there, you can link to different sheets as well. One thing to note, the one that are just basically out of the box, if I put a table, data link is from Excel, but I'm just going to do from objects in their drawing. You can create a template. So you probably would do that at the beginning, but then you can just reuse it. So I just do edit and I'll just pick my DXC file. That's the file type that it is. And then I could just basically go through next. I already specified what I wanted to always extract and look for. So I'm always looking for certain blocks. All the attributes that I want are necessary are in here. And then I can start to basically rename stuff if I want to. I can reorder stuff and reorganize how it needs to be. And then I can just insert it into my drawing. So now that it's in my drawing, if I ever did start to adjust stuff and I went to go print, you'll see that it actually tells me that some of the stuff is out of date. So from here right away, I can just say update all. And then that way I know for sure that my tables are up to date, but that'll only apply to the tables that are created from CAD. Excel won't do that because it's not live linked, unfortunately, but it's just something to note. There is basically a QA check that way. And then let's have a look at some Express tools. Oh, also, if there are any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and I'll go through them at the end. I forgot to mention that. We'll have a look at some Express tools, so how we can adjust text very quickly. We can also create break lines, which is really handy. I see a lot of people that actually just create them manually, so I'll show you how break lines can be used. The action recorder is very handy as well, and the sheet set manager. So just in our, at the top here, we have our Express tools. If you have CAD LT, you won't have that, so just something to note. But for example, we can do an arc text and we could just type in whatever we want. We can adjust it accordingly and then even pick a text height, whatever you need. And you'll see that it's very quick to basically just pick a curve and then it'll just align it along that curve very quickly. If we wanted to renumber stuff, maybe we want to make a grid, we can actually array text, which is really cool. I'll just pick rectangular, then you can specify the columns and rows. So maybe we only want one row. And then we can actually specify in between, like how far they sit apart. So I'll just put these 2500 apart. And I usually just explode arrays because otherwise they kind of just work as a group. And in here, there's an auto numbering tool. So we can select what we want, hit enter. And then at the bottom, you can see we have X, Y, and we can select the order. So X will basically just be along the X axis, whatever was selected. Y will be along the y-axis, and then we can actually just select an order. So let's just do X, and then we can specify what we start at and our increments. So maybe we want to start at 1, and we just want to go every 1. So then we can override prefix and suffix and find replace. We'll just override for this one, and I'll show you the prefix in a second. So you'll see really quickly it's renumbered them all for us. We don't have to worry about it. We can do a similar thing here. So we'll just auto number them. And this time we'll say Y because it is going downwards. And again, we'll just do 1, 1 just to make it easy. And we'll actually add a prefix. So you'll see it went through them and went 1, 2, 3. It is a text as well. So if you ever have to, just double click and just edit the text. So it is editable. It's not like set in stone. So this is cool because now we can actually enclose the objects in a shape. We can say the distance that we want. We'll just say circles and constant. And maybe we don't like how big they are. We can actually change that again. So it's not a static thing. We can actually change it. So maybe we want to change the radius to 1000 instead. And you'll see that they all change accordingly. So it's definitely something to look into to quickly do text stuff, especially when we do grids. And then that break line that I kind of mentioned. So there's a little break line symbol here. We can say the size of it. So I know 500 works in this example. And then I can just say the start and end point. And then I'll just say where it needs to break. And then that's done for you. So it's really simple to use. So there's tons in there. So definitely have a look in that Express tools. And there's quite a bit of tools in there to have a look through. Action recorder I like to use because if there is an action that I'm doing constantly, so perhaps I'm getting something from an external party. As I start to do the commands, you'll see they start to pile up. So if I want to audit it, for example, you'll see audit comes up here. Then the next one, I do want to fix the errors. Again, you see the little Y there. So maybe I also want to purge the file. And I just want to do purge all. I don't want to really enter any names, and I don't want to verify the names either. And then maybe just one more purge. So I like to purge the reg apps as well, because that's just extra data or embedded codes from different software that your external parties might want to be using. So it's good to kind of exclude them. Again, I don't want to adjust the name of all of them, or enter the name rather. And I don't want to verify. So you'll see it starts to pile up. And then maybe I want to actually save as like a clean file maybe. And I can just do save as. It'll open up a dialog box on my other screen. And if I just go back to our recorder, if we're done, we can basically just stop it. And then we'll have a little dialog box, and then we can name our thing. So maybe clean. We can say where we want it to go. So by default, it will be temporary, like your local file, but you can put it on a network as well. And then I like to add a little description. So basically used to clean external parties drawings. And then check for inconsistencies. You probably won't need that for this one, but if you're dealing with dimensions or units, it'd be good to have that on just in case. And now you'll see I have that little clean here. So if I press play, it'll go through my file and it's done basically everything. And you see that little save as dialog box came up. So it basically eliminates anyone. Basically just if I go into like a new file, for example, I can always just have it so that people are always doing that. And now it's also command as well. So I can actually just type in clean. So now I know that for a fact, it will always make someone save as and make it a new file. So at least that eliminates any issues. So definitely look into that action recorder. It's really cool. Especially if you're doing stuff a lot of the time, like repetitive tasks, have a look at how that could expedite it. In terms of the sheet set manager, I like to use that as well for my drawings. So it's just SSM for short for like the command. If you do like to, it'll bring up this little dialog box. It could be on your other screen as well. If you like to press stuff, then it's just under our view and then sheet set manager here. I'll just close this off. Cool. So in here we can start to basically manage all of our drawings. You can also clean it up to not have all the services if you don't need to. But basically all my drawings in here are under architectural. And then if I have any electrical, it'd go down there. You can start to see different information about the drawing if you need to. You can also see if people have it open or not, which is really cool. So usually you get a little lock button if someone has it open. So at least that way you can start to manipulate it that way. We can also add sheets. So for example, I have this attributes and fields tab here that I created later on. If it's not in our sheet set, we can actually add it in here. So just right clicking, import, and then it'll just ask you to browse for the drawing. You'll find where it sits. And then in here, you can basically see its status. So some of them are already in here. This one is not. So you can start to pick and choose which one you import, whether you need to import them or not. And then we'll just import this one, and you'll see that it appears in our list. So now we can actually manipulate it. So I like to basically renumber and everything like that. We can also rename it should we need to. So I'm just going to put A04. And I'll just hit enter and I'll show you where that reflects for me. If I do open this up and I look in my title block, I actually have this field in my title block. So now if I adjust it in here, I'll adjust it again just so you can see it. So maybe it's 03 now instead. And I regenerate all, you'll see that it adjusts in here. So very quickly I can play between the two, and it actually also reflects in my little drawing title blocks as well, because I have that field. So it's definitely something to look into. You can also add sheets if you don't have one. So basically I can just add a new sheet. I can number it, name it. Basically whatever I name it will be in the little tab. Have the file name, the file path, and I can even use a template file. So I'm just using the Autodesk one, but you can put your own template. So that way it's always your title block that goes in, and it'll create a new sheet with that title block with all the information, which is really cool. just a little bit more on this, just because there are a couple fields in here that I want to show you. If I do bring this over, and then I'll just have a look in here, I'll show you the attributed definitions. So in here, basically, these are just fields. So that's pulling the sheet name from there. And I've also put in a scale just to help me expedite stuff. So I basically just select my viewport. And then in here, I can start to basically just change anything that I want to do. So for my case, I want to do scale, a custom scale. And then I can say how it goes, and then I'll just say OK. And you'll see that it changes here. So where this comes in handy is if you ever change the scale and you regenerate, you'll see that this is now 1 to 16. And if I change it back, maybe I needed to actually change it back to 1 to 25. I regenerate, it already does it automatically. So I don't have to go in and change my text. And I've also even done that for my drawing name before, where I create a view, a named view, and I assign that to that little title block. And then that way, not only is it faster to find in model space because maybe I have ground floor plan as a view name, it will automatically snap to that location and it will rename my title block as well. So I don't have to always type it. I can only type it in one area. So it's just something to think about. Cool. In terms of some CUI manipulation, we can have a look at how we can create some custom buttons for those that like to press buttons. We can also have a look at keyboard shortcuts for those that like to use keyboard shortcuts like myself. And we'll have a look at multi-lines, how they can be actually used to create wall types, which is really cool. So a lot of people have complained about the new insertion method. So if we just type in insert, this is the new way forward for Autodesk. So they have this kind of little call out, but a lot of people are used to the classic insert. If that's the case, we can actually still go back to use that one without typing classic. So I'll quickly show you in the CUI, which is just the custom user interface, I believe. So just type in CUI, customize user interface. And then in here, we can see all of our commands. So if we type in insert, we can see here's our classic just at the bottom here. And then once we click on it, we can actually see all the information. If we did want to bring it as a button, we just have to go into our ribbon, panels, and then just find our insert block. And then this is where it sits. So that's the original one. And we can actually just drag this into here just to be in front of it. And then just click on that so that we can change our button style. So at the moment it's small with text, but you can adjust it accordingly. Maybe I want it to be large. And then I'll just hit apply, OK. And now if I go into my insert tab, you'll see that now it's there. So now I can actually click on it and it will come up. I can also go, for those that like to type, you'll see that that is the new insert one, but we can actually change that if we want to. And that's just in our Express tools. And we'll be just editing aliases basically. So if we just go into, our manage, and our edit aliases, it'll bring up this little notepad. And in here, you'll notice all of our commands that are in CAD. So you can start to pick and choose and edit it accordingly. I'll just quickly adjust it here, although I do recommend putting it at the bottom instead. But I'll just put classic insert here just to show you how it kind of works and just save it. And then you do need to close CAD, but there is actually a command that you can use. So it's just reinit, this one here. And then we'll just say PGP, that's that notepad that we had. And we'll click OK. So now when I press I, you'll see that it says classic insert instead of insert. And now if I click on it, it'll bring up our classic one. So you can manipulate keyboard shortcuts should you need to. I would bring them down to the bottom though. So I'll just bring this up again. You can also have a look at save as. So this is on your local. If you did want to basically share it throughout the company, you can just bring that into your company like network location. Let me just scroll down and kind of what I mentioned before, try and bring them down to the bottom instead of editing the actual ones in the middle. There is a little area for that where it kind of tells you the user defined ones. So for example, my circle and copy, I don't really use circles too much. I rather use the copy. So that's why I changed my C to copy instead. So what works for me might not work for others. So that's why it's just something to think about whether you share it on your network or you just keep it local. Similar to that CUI, we can actually create a button for creating walls using multi-line styles. So I've created an exterior wall. Basically, I have two of them, 240 and 300. If we have a look at them, I just created a macro to basically create a layer if there isn't already one. That's named exterior wall. I gave it a color as well, and then just call out that multi-line style, the exterior wall that I created. And then I created a little button image for it. That way I can just use it. And I put it in, and I did the same for the 300, just a little different macro. That's all. So now in my home, under my draw, I have my little style. And then in here, I can basically specify different things. So perhaps I have different styles I can actually pick from here. And if I'm not sure what they're called, I can just do a little question mark. And now I can see all the different styles that are loaded into this file. And maybe I want my 300. And now I can start to draw it. The cool thing about this one is I'll just draw another one that's perpendicular so you can see. There's actually extra tools in this one. So if I just double click, you'll see it brings up this little window. So I can choose different ways of it actually connecting. So maybe I want it to be like a T, and now I just select the 2, and you'll see it trims automatically for me. So that's really cool. Unfortunately, the only way to edit them, if you need to edit them, is to actually delete all those styles. And then if we just go into our multi-line style dialog box, now we can modify it. Unfortunately, Autodesk isn't doing anything more for us to be able to not have to do this method, but just definitely have a look at how you could use them. So basically, I've created offsets for whatever I need my wall to be. And then in here, I can also change basically the layer color or the line type. So you could put like insulation as one line type if you want. You can do different types of hatching. So definitely have a look at how you can use that to its full advantage. And you can change the colors as well. So basically it just expedites stuff. So if I did create my walls, I can right away just basically have my hatching as I need it and basically just trim stuff as well, which is really cool. And then that's the door from before that I showed you. So yeah, definitely have a look at that and play around with the hatching. I know sometimes not all hatches work the way you might want them, but it's definitely a really cool tool. Some Lisps. So Lisps are cool because I like to use them for both block legends and line legends, just to expedite my workflow a bit. I also like to use them for customized hatching. So I'll quickly just show you that in here. So basically in here, I like to use a block legend just because it's similar to the table, but I can actually have a little icon. So just using appload, I'll just quickly load in these two legends, or Lisps, sorry, but different types of legends. Again, if you are a button pusher, it's just under your manage, and then you'll see load application, or just appload if you type. Cool. And then I'll just do the block legend first. Block legend. Cool. And then you can specify which blocks you want in your list. You can even specify to use all the blocks. You'll see that little dynamic rectangle that we created earlier. So it'll appear at the bottom here that we're just kind of missing. It is a bit clunky, so I like to use one as a reference, and then I just drag and drop, and then I just adjust accordingly. That's just the fastest way that I found for it to work, and then I just delete the other one. These aren't, these are static, so they're not live linked. So you probably either save it for later, or that's why I like to use a reference one that I just scale it to. Basically in here, we'll see the little icon, the name of the block, and that's why I like to have the description, because I like to put it in there. Let me just change this so that we can see it a bit better. So we can see the description, and we can see how many were drawn. So that's that CAD webinar rectangle description that I wrote before, and we can see that there's one of them. So that's why I like to use descriptions as well. And then we can also do a little line legend, which is cool. So that's just typing in legend. I can select my objects, hit enter, and then an insertion point. This is meant for paper space, so it's small here, but I'm just going to scale it up by 150 just so we can see it a bit better. It's 100 times between model and paper space, but this is pretty cool because now I can basically have my lines for that layer, so type A and type B, and that's just my layers. So if I go here, we can see my type A and type B here. So very quickly we can basically specify different lines, and we can see which layers they're on, and we can just either use that in our template. So I know a lot of people like to put lines and line styles there, and then that way we can basically have a little legend of what layer each one is on and what kind they're using. Another one I like to use is the hatch one. So I've done this before for basically just creating different types of hatch patterns. So for this one, I was just doing like different block styles. So it doesn't work too well with curved. So that's why I just found like a blocky font. And then in our Express tools, there is actually a way to explode your text. So I'll just explode that. Just take note that it does kind of put it in a different location. That's all right. And then at least this way, it kind of just made it a bit easier for me to have a square. And then I just created a bunch of different hatches. So like maybe a 250 thick slab, 150, 350, 450. So if I just made it a PDF, for example, maybe that's a 200 slab. This one's still to be confirmed. And then maybe I have some block work on this wall here. So it's really quickly to just basically create a little hatch this way. And I've used custom hatches for like floors and walls and stuff like that. And I've created them in CAD and I've put them into Revit, and I've also done it for Bluebeam as well. So they are pretty universal. This hatch is super easy to use. It actually just gives you this little square at 0, 0, 0, and it basically just tells you what to do. It says like select whatever's in here, and like, yeah, it's really simple to use. So definitely take advantage of it if you are creating hatches. And then I'll just show you a quick website here. So have a look at this one, kimprojects.com. You could just type that in, and then you don't need to worry about the free LISPS program. Just kind of click on this button here, and you'll see tons of different free LISPS that you have. So for example, that legend one that I used, just showed you earlier, that one's there. But you can see the different commands and the different types here. So definitely take advantage of that. And then there's also LEMAC programming. So have a look at LEMAC programming as well. So LEEMAC programming. And then again, LISPs only work for the full CAD, so just something to take note of. Cool. And some scripting. So I'll show you how we can create automatic text, and basically it's just parametric and a lot easier for us to do. We'll also have a look at how we can use hatching with scripting, and then some areas and perimeters as well, which is really cool. So if you have AEC, then you will have Civil 3D. So unfortunately, Dynamo isn't available for AutoCAD, but Civil 3D works the same. So if you do have the AEC collection, you can actually take advantage of Dynamo. So just in our Manage tab, and we click on Dynamo, it'll bring up another little window. And in here, this is where you can start to do your different scripting. So it is a little bit high level, but I'll just show you how different things can be expedited. So for example, this one along, basically measuring stuff along a curve and placing stuff along a curve. I just select the line that I want, and then I have different ones. So I have divide curve equally or measure. It'll automatically measure from a curve. And then I'll basically put text and I'll put circles. So I'll just run that so I can show you. And I'll change it to automatic. So as I start to move stuff around, you can see how it works. So if I move this point, for example, it'll start to recalculate. So you can see there's 25 circles. If I move it, there's 27. And basically, as I start to go, it just recalculates and renumbers and puts circles around stuff, which is really neat. We can also basically divide it equally. So maybe we want only 10 of them, regardless of how long that curve is. We can do that as well and just let the program do the calculations for you. You don't have to worry about like the divide command that I know a lot of people use. And then it's as simple as maybe if we want it to be like 20 instead, we can always just change to whatever number we want. So if we change it to 20, it'll just change. And now whenever we basically move it, it will adjust and always make sure that there's 20. Another cool one that we could do is our hatches, and this will just find all the enclosed shapes and create a hatch depending on which layer it is. So we can cater it that way. So that type A, type B that I showed you before, those are just the different colors, just to kind of show you it a little bit easier. We can then specify which type of hatching it is. So if I run it, you can see that it changes them accordingly. I'm just putting both hatches in both just to quickly show you. But we can even put them in, and then we can actually delete them as well if we need to. And then we can actually put another one. So maybe we want a solid fill instead. So really quickly, we can hatch stuff in certain layers and in closed shapes. We can also change its scale or rotation should we need to for those hatches. So it's really cool that it could just find that information for us and we don't have to worry about it. So that could be useful for the next kind of thing. So I'm going to talk about area and perimeter. So we could create spaces and give them certain hatches. And then with that, we can actually run a script that will automatically calculate the area and perimeter for us. So as I move, like maybe the area has to change for whatever reason, it'll recalculate and recenter everything for us all the time. So this one's a little bit more complex. It's using like some math and stuff like that. But basically, if I wanted to just do perimeter, it just changes the calculations a little bit, and then you'll see it created a little perimeter. So as I just toggle this on and off, I can change that should I need to. So this one's convenient because you can see it is text. If you need to change it for whatever reason, you can, or you can just add it in the script, and I'll show you that in a second. But you'll see all of our enclosed shapes and stuff like that. So that little house that I showed you before starts to basically pick and choose. If square millimeter doesn't work for you, we can also change that as well. That's basically just based off of some text in the background. So I can change it to square meter, and then I can just, using division, I can basically just, I just did 1,000 just to quickly show you, but basically there is little division here that you can add, and then it'll start to round stuff and add prefixes, suffixes if you need to. So it's pretty neat. With that hatching and our little area or perimeter, we can quickly start to just create like QA views for our plans through scripting. Cool. So if there's any questions, please send them through and we can have a little discussion. Also, if there are any questions later on, just feel free to email us because I know there's quite a bit going on there that you might want to test, and then you might want to cater it more to your guys. So just let me know through emails if you don't have any questions. Here's our email as well, just in case you don't have it. All right, well, if there's no questions, again, feel free to email us if you think of something down the track. But if not, thank you for watching and thank you for your time.